this is the inaugural State of the First District address. And some may be asking why I decided to do this type of conversation is what I'm going to have it. Well, before I ran for office, there were times when I really didn't know what was going on in the district. I knew what was going on my street and in my neighborhood. And if you read the paper and watch TV, you see all kinds of things happening in the warehouse district and downtown, but very little information about what's happening in the neighborhoods. And quite honestly, the neighborhoods is where a lot of things are going on. We should be putting a lot of emphasis in the neighborhoods, and so people feel like they have a good quality of life. Because why are you going to go downtown in the warehouse district if you feel right in your own backyard you're not safe, the properties are not being maintained? So that's kind of why I wanted to have this kind of conversation. So in addition to meeting with folks individually, as I do throughout the district, my plan is to do this once a year, to have a general conversation. And this first meeting, I expected it to be very few people here. And that's okay, because I like the intimate settings. And I'm sure folks may come in as we go along. And with March Madness, who knew it was March Madness when I set this date? I didn't realize it was March Madness. And so I'm competing with March Madness. And although I think I'm very exciting, people think March Madness is much more exciting. So that's okay. So this is going to be a conversation. Now, over here on the side of the room, what you will see that I've brought are some things that we're going to talk about. But some things that are here are Money Smart Week brochures. So if you don't know what's going on with Money Smart Week, there's a lot of information, a lot of free classes to help us figure out how to keep more of our money in our own pocket. I brought the handbook that the city provides, handbook for landlords and tenants, so folks know what their rights are and how to get some remedies for some of the things that are going on in town. I've also brought, for business owners, we just passed the last session. It's called the City of Peoria First District Facade Improvement Program. Now this is a program that initially was only covering parts of the Southern Gateway, and it was just sitting there and just sitting there and just sitting there, and money wasn't being used. And they were looking at sweeping that out of the First District, taking the money out. I'm like, no, no, no. If we are actually doing what we're supposed to do and let business owners know there is help, and what about Western? Why don't we wrap this facade program up on Western, because there are business owners there that could use some help. This doesn't pay for all of their improvements. They have to do half, and then this can provide half as well, up to a certain amount. And so there's some application here. So if you're a business owner or know someone who owns a business in the Southern Gateway or on Western, this is the application that they should take. Also, what I brought here was a 2014 programs and events, and it lists the Great American Cleanup, the Saturday Morning Neighborhood Cleanup, Citizen Police Academy, National Night Out Against Crime, the City County Citizen Leadership Academy, and Neighborhood Watch. And so if you're interested in those dates, when those are happening, then take this document before you leave. Also, what is very important, I think everyone should take, is this business card for code enforcement, because it has their phone number on it. And if you see issues that need to be addressed in the community, call code enforcement. I want take 4 or 5 or 10 of these. Okay, between me and you. Answer? Yes, they will answer. Well, sometimes if the person's gone, it'll go to Peoria Cares or it'll go to voicemail. No, call them, make sure they got your voicemail, because I want you to take so many of these cards, give them to your neighbors, and tell them, call these folks. One of the things I hear is that, well, we don't really get many calls about that. Oh, really? We're going to remedy that situation right now, because there's so much going on in our community. We need to make sure that folks are calling in, even if you don't live in the First District. This phone number works. If you see somebody who's parked on their grass in the front yard, oh, really? Call code enforcement. If you see folks who are you see someone dumping in an alley, tires and TVs, don't approach them. Don't put yourself in danger. But from your house, if you can see the make of the car, the model of the car or truck, and get a part or all of the license plate number from your house, call code enforcement and report that information. And if you've got that level of information, the police department is interested as well, because we know that so many people are dumping in our community that don't even live in our community. We have more tires dumped in our community than we have cars for them to go on. So we know these tires are not coming from our community. And so take 4 or 5 or 10 of these cards, give them to your neighbors, tell them, I want so many calls coming to that department, they feel like they need to hire somebody.
So well, then, how do we get them to follow through on it?
Well, because you call in, or if you have a smartphone, there is a Peoria Cares app. They log those, especially that app, and they will email you back and tell you what the status of it is. And then you can always go back into that app. Let's say a week or two later, you're trying to figure out, well, whatever happened with that? You can go back, and that app will trace the activity of that call or that report that you made. So if you've got a smartphone, Peoria Cares has an app. It's a free app. You go out to the App Store, and you pull it down, and it's free. You take a picture, you run up on something, it's a burned out house, maybe that's been not boarded up yet. Take a picture of it, you can send it to code enforcement through that app, and then type, because I did this a couple weeks ago, and then type in what your concern is about that house or whatever you're seeing, and they will respond to you because they'll ask you for your email address, they ask you for your phone number, and they track it, and they will call you because they called me back and said, oh yeah, we know about that, this is what's happening, this is how long we feel it's going to take before we resolve that issue. And so we've gone through what was on the list here, but definitely use that card. The last thing I'll leave here, and we're not going to talk a lot about it because this is more related to the city versus our district. If you wanted to have the detailed information about the water company buyout, here it is right here. The first page is a summary of what they're looking at. And then it's some night when you can't go to sleep, you can read through the actual contract that is not approved. This is proposed. And I can tell you already, we're not going to go into a lot about that, but I can tell you there's a lot of questions about what is being proposed. It was supposed to come up for the City Council vote on this coming Tuesday, but it's not. It's been pushed back to April 22nd. And that's really because of you and folks asking questions about, well, what about this and what about that, and how is this going to work and how is this other thing going to work? And some of the City Council members have gotten our own attorney to look at this because we want to make sure it's drafted if this is something we want to vote on, and that's a if. Is it in our, when I say our, I mean the city's best interest, or is it really in the water company's best interest? And so we're going to be looking at that. And so April 22nd, so take one before you leave, and then, give us feedback. I know Lavetta and Mrs. Sierra, you all don't have any problems giving us feedback on Tuesdays. But anyone else who might see something in there that you have kind of a concern about, and you can't get a hold of somebody to talk one-on-one, come to the meeting and mention that, okay? Now, we're gonna be, the reason I said this is gonna be a short meeting, twofold. This is just in a state of the district, and the district is a very small part of the city. And so there's a lot going on in this district, and you're not going to hear me talk much about the warehouse district. You're not going to hear me talk today much about downtown. You know why? Every time you turn the TV on, read the paper, hear the radio, it's something about the warehouse district and something about downtown. Well, that's all well and good, and that's a very important area of our city, but I quite frankly feel the neighborhoods are even more important. And if we would have put as much effort into the neighborhoods as we put it in some of these other areas, we probably wouldn't have some of the conversations we're having. But here we are. So I'm going to be leaving after this and going back over where you want me to be, and that's talking about code enforcement. Now, even though my tenure has been less than a year, with your help, we have really accomplished a lot. And 2014 promised to bring great things for the first district, which includes the North Valley, downtown, the warehouse district, and the South Side. Now, looking back over the last 10 months, there's much that we can take pride in, and because the work that has been established, we are working to reestablish the first district as the gateway into the city. Just about every bridge coming over from the East Peoria area comes right into the first district. So we're a prime location, basically. They say location, location, location. Well, we're a prime location. In a short amount of time, we have accomplished a considerable amount of work benefiting our community. Now, I ran on the platform of pride, jobs, and safety, and thanks to your continued support, I want to give you a pat on the back. I want you to pat yourself on the back because you have made a lot of things happen. Examples of that has been the formation of 2 neighborhood groups. The Southside Community United for Change formed first in the last couple of months, and that's a group that seeks to be an umbrella organization over the neighborhood associations, and really provides the neighborhood association someplace to all come together and say, what's happening in one part of the neighborhood may also be happening in another part of the neighborhood, but we don't know. And so now there's a place they can go to say, this is happening, and as speaking as one voice, come to your city council representative or the city council and say, these things are happening in these two parts of our community, and we really need to have somebody address those things. And so that's awesome that has happened. Also, the North Side Alliance has reformed. And if you recall, way back when Senator Kaler, when he was in the community, he was running that organization, and now they have reinstituted themselves. And so if you live in the North Valley, you've got the North Side Alliance, and on the South Side, the South Side Community United for Change. In addition, we still have the Neighborhood Alliance that's still functioning under the leadership of Yvonne Fleming, who's here. Thank you, Yvonne, for being here. Now, pride in our community continues to be shown in, some of you were involved with the Litter Patrol that connected with Commonplace and was funded by LISC. LISC gave money for the Litter Patrol to enlist children who live in the community to go out and clean up our community. They live here, and it is more than just about cleaning up the neighborhood. For these kids, it helps them to gain pride in the community. For a lot of them, it's their first interest or first way to earn a little bit of money. I mean, can you imagine being, 12, 11, and somebody's paying you to do something, and you're like, whoa, okay, I've got some money, and it used to be $10 or $12 when I was little, was a lot of money. Now, it's maybe not as much money, but that's not the point. The point wasn't to pay kids. The point was to teach them pride in their community. And with pride comes a reward of just knowing you did a good job. And then for kids, if you can kick them a little money on the side, then that's good too. Some of the things that the Southside Community United for Change are talking about is identifying 4 of the major entryways into the South Side and putting a beautification project out there, like Lavetta and her group did, and Babette out on Martin Luther King and Western. That might be an area that we can bring back. There are organizations in town who I've talked to about this type of thing, and they're interested in helping with funding that kind of thing.
And help.
Oh yeah, and the
all old and decrepit.
well, that's where the community coming together and getting some of these young people more engaged will help, because quite honestly, I tell people I look young, but I'm a grandmother, and I'm not going to be around forever. So the fact that my 6-year-old grandson has the energy to want to do things, he comes to this. Whenever you see me, oftentimes you'll see him. He was at the Friendship House when we had meetings there. So I bring him because that's how you start training your children to get engaged in their community when they're young. It's like, going to church. Kids don't usually want to go to church, but after a while they relent and they realize, okay, I better make the best of this because I'm coming whether I want to or not. And they end up making the best of it. For instance, I talked about the meeting at the Friendship House, and I talked about the meeting at Bethel Church. Those were avenues I feel it's helpful to bring the community out and talk about how we can address some of these things. Because quite honestly, all of us in the room keeping our eyes open, it's just a drop in the bucket compared to how large this community and how large this city is. And so we need to be talking to our neighbors and letting them know what you've heard. Like you called Babette and told her about this meeting, and Miss Sierra called me and said, what time is it going to start? And I was up and down Western talking to the business owners and telling them about this meeting, specifically because I knew I would have these applications there for them to take.
And look who showed up.
Yeah, but you know what? My grandmother always taught me, Denise, you do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't worry about if these other people are not doing it, because eventually they will see, well, why is Denise being so successful with this, and why is she getting this and that? And I tell them because I'm involved. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna put all my cards on the table. I hear people talk all the time. Well, if Lavetta Rickers gets against something or for something, that's what the city council will do. I say, really, you think that? And they're like, yeah. And I hear it all the time. But wait a minute, this is what I asked them. I said, well, why do you think that is? Well, she's always there talking to them at the city council meetings, and she's always on these other commissions. I said, so let's go back. You say that you feel like she gets whatever she wants, and you say you feel like it's because she's involved. So what does that tell you you need to do? Get involved. I said, now I'm gonna tell you, Lavetta will probably tell you she doesn't get everything she wants, but the fact that you think she does because she is involved is a compliment to her because she's involved. You know, it's one thing to say, well, I don't like my elected official. It's another thing altogether to go and vote. You know, I tell people all the time, if you don't vote for somebody or something that you believe in, then you're really voting against your own interest. And so that's a compliment to you because they think, they see you out there, they see you fighting the good fight, they feel like you get what you want even though you don't feel like you get what you want. But what you are showing them is that this is how you get it done. So thank you for that. Now, you know, there's a lot going on in the 1st District, and we're not going to be able to get through half or a quarter of it, but so let me hit some of the highlights. Aldi closed. We all know that. Let me tell you what's happening on that front. I established a committee of business people, educational people, social service people, community people. There's a representative on the committee from the Southside Community United for Change. And what we are doing is looking at different avenues to address the food desert that is the whole 1st District. And I'm not just talking about the South Side that we're looking at. We're also looking at how to address that in the North Valley, because the North Valley was a food desert before the South Side became a food desert, as quiet as it kept. And most people don't realize that. And when we're talking about this Aldi situation, they hear only the South Side, but I'm thinking the North Valley as well, because my district is not just the South Side. My district is not just the downtown and the warehouse. My district is also the North Valley, all of the Averyville, all the way up to War Memorial. It's a huge district with a huge need. And so that's what I'm looking at. Now, I broke that committee down into 3 teams. The first team is looking at grocery stores, concepts that can come right into that building. The second team is looking at grocery store locations in other parts of the district. And the third team is looking at other type of food alternative strategies, like, you know, can we bring in a co-op? What about nonprofits? What about farmers market? Anything you could possibly think of as a concept, that team is looking at, that third team is looking at that concept now. Next Saturday, the 29th, at the Riverplex, there's going to be a food summit where they're going to be talking about a lot of these issues related to food deserts. And it's really ideal that this is happening right at this time because of what we're going through. And believe it or not, most people don't realize that the Bradley University area isn't a food desert. And so it's not an issue that relates to lower socioeconomic individuals. It impacts the Columbia Terrace area and the Bradley University students, everybody up on Moss Avenue. Now they can get to other locations because a lot of them have more transportations than other folk, but they're in the food desert as well. So this is a global issue. It is not just a South Side issue. It's not just a 1st District issue.
What time is that going to be?
It starts at 9 at the Riverplex. And if you go out, if you go by the Riverplex at some point, or you go online and look at the information, but your computer's down, there is a registration. So they want to know how many people are going to be coming. So.
Where do you go online?
If you Google food summit, it should come up. Mary Art Apple, if you go out to, I'm sure Mary probably has it attached to her site. Mary Art Apple at Apple's Bakery is very involved with this process. She's very knowledgeable about what's going on in this area. And so if you go out to her site, I'm sure she may have a link out to it. I know the county is very involved. And
I did have a link now.
I'm sorry?
When they were having the first one, the U of I also had a link.
Okay. Because
Extension.
the Extend U of I Extension. And so go out to U of I Extension or the Peoria County, because I know they're supporting this concept as well. But it's the 29th at the Riverplex, and I believe it's from like 9 to 2, I want to say, something like that. Now, I don't have to tell you that we've got issues of code enforcement in our area. I don't have to tell you we've got all kinds of homes abandoned and boarded up in our area. I don't have to tell you that we have landlords who have bought some of these properties for $600 and looking at it like it's a cash cow, you know, who will, there will be, I had a call from a lady whose daughter put down $500 as a deposit on a house that had a bright red abate sticker on it. Well, she was in her early 20s and, you know, her first apartment, she thought she was doing a good thing and she's gonna get a house, you know, and didn't understand that red abate sticker meant something. And the person who was gonna rent it to her told her, oh yeah, that stuff will be taken care of by the time you move in. Well, she went and got her mom and brought her mom over, and her mother lost her mind, as you can imagine, because the house was not in any kind of health safety condition. And her mother said, no, you will get your money back from this guy. Well, he would not give her money back. So how many other times has that happened to somebody where they didn't get their money back?
Every day.
That needs to stop. And so what I have learned since I've been in office is that we got all kind of ordinances on the books, but we don't have enough people to enforce them. Now, why is that? Now, in my opinion, that's the tail wagging the dog. If the city is the dog, and we don't have enough people to enforce what we say should be a concern, that's a problem. No, we're in the position to be able to do that. I'm sorry.
Where is that?
That's me. That's my timer.
Oh,
So I'm gonna I think it might stop, so forgive me if it doesn't. So we should be doing something about what's happening in our community. We've got slum landlords that we need to, how we say, help them understand that mediocrity will no longer be accepted. And I'm here to tell you, I'm trying to help them understand that. Not trying to do anything that is putting any undue pressure on them, not trying to do anything that's against the law, not trying to do anything that is not the right thing to do. Now, I'm gonna tell you, some of them have heard about my increased attention in that area and have called me and have told me their addresses and what they're planning to do. And that's all we want, is to know that they're doing something. We don't want them to get rid of the properties and leave town. Now, we want them to do that if they're not gonna do something good to maintain the properties. Let me turn this off. If they're not going to maintain the properties the way they're supposed to, then we want them gone.
and the people in them too.
Oh, let me tell you, it is not just the landlords. We got some tenants that, let me tell you,
They tear up every house they live in.
that either do not have any regard for the property, they don't maintain their children and making sure that, and teach their children to have regard for other people's property. And so it is not just a one-way street. It is
Because
just,
they haven't been taught.
exactly. When you, if you remember the term that used to be, people used to talk about children raising children. Remember that? About 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20? Well, those children who were raising children have children who, they weren't taught the first time because they were being raised by children. And so on the one hand, you say, well, you know, if they don't know, but as I say to my daughter, when you know better, you do better. And you don't wait for somebody to say, well, you know, why don't you pick that up? It's in front of your house. I had a lady tell me once, when I was walking, I walk around the community a lot. I drive around a lot because, you know, Lavetta called me and she was talking about something. I'm like, oh, I'm right down the street from there because I drive around the community a lot. In fact, the police know I drive around the community a lot because I think somebody must have reported my car. Because I said that to them, they said, oh yeah, we know. I'm like, wait a minute, was I reported? Because I drive around, and I'll drive around the block maybe 3 times because I'm looking at something, and I'm looking at it from a different angle. So I might drive around a property 3 times, and apparently somebody must have called and reported my car. And they're like, oh, that's just a city councilwoman, she's always driving around. And so people know me. But the lady, I was walking through, I won't say the area it was, and I said, you know, wow, there's a lot of stuff, paper and stuff blown around here. And I was standing in front of her house, and I was really talking about what's in front of her house. I'm like, look at all this stuff that's blown around here. Isn't that a shame? And she said, yeah, I don't know why somebody don't pick it up. I said, well, yeah, you know what? If it was in front of my house, I'd pick it up. And she said, well, it's not mine, so I ain't picking it up.
Oh, yes, that's the attitude.
And so I was kind of like trying to suggest that she would do that without kind of saying, hey, why don't you pick this up? Because then people get offended if they feel like you're in their business. And so you kind of say it in such a way as to put it on you. And she's like, well, no, it ain't mine, so I ain't picking it up, because I pick up stuff that's mine. I said, wow, you know, if it was in front of my house and making my house not look nice, I'd pick it up. And I left it at that. Now, after I left, she may have picked it up because I wasn't there to see it. But we have to take personal responsibility of what's happening in front of our house, on our street, and in our neighborhood. And, you know, it gets tiring. Ask Lavetta. It gets tiring trying to do this. You know, both her and Babette has the Pride in Peoria. Pride is picking up in Peoria. And they wear those shirts all the time. And you hope that in some way, subliminally, is telling people, you know what, it's okay to bend down and pick it up if you didn't put it there. You know, my grandson used to call my husband the garbage man. And I'm like, what? Because every Sunday morning now, I think this is his way of getting out of church. Every Sunday morning, he gets a garbage bag, and he's got a grabber and gloves, and he'd take my grandson out, and they go out all around our block, and they're picking up trash. And I'm telling you, they come back with a garbage bag full of, they're not going around a lot of blocks, they're just going around our block. Now, because we live right off of Garrett, and behind us is Martin Luther King. And there's a bluff there that catches all kind of papers and stuff, and there's a garbage can right there that people probably don't see, that garbage can right there when they throw it on the floor on the ground right next to the garbage can. And so that's what he does. And if we all were doing that, we don't have to wait for there to be some litter patrol to do it. We live there. And can you imagine what our neighborhood would look like if only 2 or 3 people on a block, on each block, not everybody, because everybody's not going to do it, how that would change the look of our area. So I think with the dilapidated houses, the landlords and tenants who are not taking care of the properties, with the litter, all of these can change if we decide to continue what you're doing and bringing in these younger people, because I know you were trying to bring in Ryan was one of the younger people you're trying, and that's what it's going to take, getting these young folks to buy into the concept that if you live here, help us to maintain it. Now, some other things that you're going to see coming in a couple of weeks is the new playground equipment coming to Martin Luther King Park. And that came from TIF money. Basically, TIF money is taxpayer money. The taxpayers that lived in the South Town area said okay to buy equipment, playground equipment for Martin Luther King Park. And in addition to that, one of the things, whenever I go there with my grandson, I watch people come across the street all the time, that 5 lanes of traffic, and I'm like, oh, I always pray, Lord, don't let somebody get run over, because they're darting across traffic. And so I've asked the Public Works Department to look at slowing that traffic down by putting parking on both sides of MacArthur Highway. So now when you go to the park, you can park right along the park, and your kids can get out on the passenger side instead of parking across the street and darting across. When St. Paul, my church, has their event there, people park across the street, and there's always folks darting across, and I'm just always so fearful of someone getting run over. And so what you see here are a couple of renditions of what it could look like. This is not the final product. This is just a rendition to kind of give you a sense of what it would look like. And when you're putting more trees, and it looks more like a neighborhood and not a racetrack. And so what you will see here is there's parking on both sides. This has parking on both sides, a bike lane, 2 drive lanes, and a middle turn lane. And so instead of 4 drive lanes and a middle turn lane, you have parking, drive, turn, drive, parking, and a bike lane. But these are just some conceptual drawings, and this one I know is more, this is the Manning University intersection improvement, and it says Manning University, but you see right here it's the MacArthur and McBean. I just think that they already had that made, yeah, and they didn't change it because it's pretty much the same. I think you, Lavetta, even thought it was Manning University. It's the same kind of concept. And finally, we want to really, when we talk about the children, we want to really encourage and support Carl Cannon, what he's doing with Don't Start, because that's really where training our children to not let the streets take them over starts. So if we're training them to don't start, then we don't have to worry about them on don't shoot, because it's in the middle where we lose them. And if we've got the Don't Start program, we've got some of these litter patrol programs happening. I'm working with METEC and the East Bluff Neighborhood Association for a lawn mowing program that will be kind of mirror what they did last year, but happening on the south side as well. All of that, there's a lot being worked on right now. And I wish I had more time to go through that, but let me tell you something. You need to be very proud of the fact that you're here learning what's going on, getting involved, staying involved, and encouraging other people to get involved, because that's how things happen. It can happen. We don't need more liquor stores. I mean, I think there are plenty of places to buy liquor. You know, if you want to, there are plenty of places to buy all kinds of things. Do we need more in our neighborhoods? That's for you to decide. Lastly, I want you to watch for, well, not lastly, watch for the new radio station that's coming to the South Side, and what I'm calling a community business development center to help with workforce development and business development on the South Side. And that hopefully will be coming to life here in the next couple of months, so look for that.
Where will it be?
I'm hoping to be out of the Blaine Sumner location. Because one of the things that I'm hoping to address is the 28% unemployment rate among African Americans in the South Side. 28% unemployment rate. Now, as any other big significant event that happens that the city steps in, I think that's a number that suggests the city needs to step in.
I would say it's even higher.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And that's an average, but this is an average. So you know it's got to be higher. It's time for us to step in and look at this, and we may not have all the answers, the city, because we know we don't have all the money. We know we don't have all the resources, but I think it's time to put together, and I hate to say this, yet another commission, because we have enough, but maybe assign this to one of the commissions that are already in existence, right, to say, how can we look at this 28% or greater unemployment rate for a great many of our community citizens and not do anything about it? We need to be doing something about that, bringing some kind of pressure to bear somewhere, or forming more. We used to have a youth job training, a job program through the city. You know, whatever happened with that? Maybe we can reinstitute that. Maybe it's still there and no one has cared enough to pick it back up. Well, there's a lot of these things that I'm starting to pick back up, and I hope you will be there to support me. And I'm not looking for Lavetta to be at one more meeting, because God knows she's everywhere. And Carlos could tell you, if Lavetta, really, do we need to go to that again? That's probably what you probably say. But I know, but I see, Babette's your shadow. And so,
She's the sheriff and I'm the deputy.
Okay. But we need other sheriffs and deputies out there. So we have a lot of work to do in the 1st District. It will take a lot of time, effort, and money. Time and effort we have tons of, money not so much. But this is where our creativity comes in. Let's keep moving the district forward little by little. We can turn our district around. But it's going to take all of us pulling together in the same direction. Are we always going to agree in lockstep every time? No, we're not going to always agree with everything. But I think we can all agree that we want to move forward. And it is that passion that we have that makes us do what we do and come out to these kinds of things when we're only one of 15 people who might be here. But we have that passion to move things forward, and I think we can do that. We can get the job done. We really can. I don't take lightly the trust that you've put in me and putting me in this seat to be the watchdog of the city's budget, to try to secure as much as I can for the 1st District and what I call the gateway to the City of Peoria. That's the job you hired me for, and that's the job I'm trying to accomplish for you. So I thank you so much for coming out this morning. I hope you found that it was worth your time. We've got a lot of work to do, and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves. Coming into it'll be 1 year since I was elected last month, 1 year in May since I was installed. And you ask my husband, he'll tell you, I have not stopped yet. He wonders whatever happened to his wife. I'm doing what I was doing as a community activist, and I enjoy it. And I hope you give me a little more time, give yourself a little more time to make the change, because none of this is going to happen overnight. You've been around forever. Lavetta, you've been around forever. You know this. I hope you see things are trending better. Yeah, I will. I'll get to you. I hope you see that things are trending better. I hope you sense what I sense in the community, that people are really excited about maybe this time. And I don't want to let you down. But I can't do it by myself. And a lot of you have been there every step of the way with me, and we just need to bring more people into it.